Hi, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo. We got some new people in the group and everything, and for this discussion. And thanks so much for everyone that voted for this topic for October. I'm really excited to talk to y'all about this. I was talking to a close friend, and I just love the synchronicity of things sometimes. Literally 4 years ago this month was the first time I talked about Speak Fluent You. And I loved it then. I think I'm going to love it now. I know I'm going to enjoy it now. If you're here on live, go ahead and say hi and let me know you're here. Just a reminder that the more you comment and post, the more I can make sure that I'm providing tools that resonate with you. And also, we have the weekly winners every week. So the more that you're commenting, that you're sharing the group and the videos with other people by inviting them to the group because they can't see it outside of the group. It's a private group. We get to be vulnerable and open with each other in this group. Then you all get added into the raffle each week for getting a free 15-minute session with me. And one of the things that I wanted to start off with this topic of Speak Fluent You is I wanted to acknowledge the person many, many years ago now that asked me to create that call. And you know who you are. Thank you so much. It was a gentleman that was struggling with stuttering. And they knew that I was a speech language pathologist, and they knew that I'd worked with learning and behavior and just different learning styles. And they wanted some tools, some verbal clearings, some energetic clearings to improve their fluency, how smoothly they were able to express themselves verbally by getting around a lot of the energetic sticking points that they had, getting around what they knew there was something that was coming up in their world that was preventing them from really showing what they knew in a smooth way. And it ended up being that they wanted clearing specifically for stuttering, and it created this Speak Fluent You discussion that we had on Zoom 4 years ago. And all these tools came up since then. I actually ended up having a private session and consultation with him about his communication reality. And so between that conversation and what showed up in the Zoom, where a bunch of people from around the world brought in their questions and their awareness, from Australia to the US to Europe. I mean, it was really, really cool. And from all walks of life, people who were fellow speech language pathologists and they wanted to use the tools to help their clients, to them realizing that some of this stuff around fluency was stopping them from being as much of a contribution as they wanted to be to people who were disfluent, who were having expressive language difficulties, to parents who came in and were like, I'd like to make sure that I'm empowering my child and make sure that I'm a living model of how to show up and express myself and have my own voice. To some people that it was just a hodgepodge of they'd experienced abuse and they realized that some of these aspects of how they were not able to have their voice in relationships were connected to some of their past experiences around abuse. So it was so many different things. These are just a couple examples. So much happened in that call. So one of the things, because as I was listening to the call, I was like, this was amazing. Like, I love re-listening to stuff and being like, man, this was such a great discussion. I'm actually going to offer free for 3 people the replay of that 1 hour discussion. And how do you get that freebie? You get it by asking questions and engaging in these calls over the course of these next 3 calls, because we have 3 dates in October where we're going to be talking about Speak Fluent You. And I'm going to pick one person for each call. We're going to put anybody who's on live and that catches the replay by 24 hours after I'm done with this discussion. I'm going to announce the person who won this free 1 hour of clearings and discussion and vulnerability and energies. And I'm also going to be discussing things that I didn't discuss. in that call over the next 3 calls. So I'm really excited about that because the world has changed and I've changed and I've gotten a lot more awareness about how to empower people around how they speak and how they show up and how they express themselves in all different ways since then. And so I'm going to add those little nuggets in here as well for y'all. But before we get started on this awesome journey that I am, if you can't tell, super lit up about, please go ahead and put in the chat, if you're willing, put in the chat, what are your communication targets? What would you like to be more fluent in, where it's like you have that smoothness, that ease in any area of communication, be it expression, how you process information, gosh, in what ways you show and have your voice in the world and where you don't have your voice in the world. I'm going to give some examples that were mentioned to me recently in case any of this resonates for you. And if it does, go ahead and put it in the chat, like, oh, that one, what you just said, and then give me a little blurb afterwards so I can remember what it is, because it might not sync up with when I see your comments. So some people were asking for getting out of the wrongness of them, like assuming that whatever is going on with how they communicate is wrong, that they need to fix their communication style. I have this interesting point of view that there's actually not about fixing anyone's communication style. It's about adding to their communication style and adding awareness, facilitating more awareness about what their communication style creates and what it doesn't create, and being willing for people to use multiple different communication styles. So, in the call that we did 4 years ago, someone asked for having the full range of expression. And what they meant was they wanted to be able to do a soft voice and be kind of timid sometimes, and do like a seductive voice, which can be all different kinds of smooth silkiness, but then also be willing to yell, or being willing to be very firm, which isn't always about yelling, and have that energy behind how they speak. Like all these different functions to how they speak, instead of only using a certain range, a certain energy when they show up with other people. And also recognizing how, depending on who they were interacting with, they still would default to certain ways of being instead of looking at all the possible options. So if you would like all the possible options and be able to be like, oh yeah, I am going to let you know about yourself and about what I'm willing to be with you and what I'm not willing to be with you, what type of interactions are okay with me and what type of interactions are not okay with me. And then also be like, oh, well, hi. And oh my gosh, oh, I get to talk with you today. Thank you so much. And then go back and do the, well, hi. And are we going to get to play today? And you see how that's a very different energy than the other two that I did, and be able to move between them really easily and choose which one will create the most. Okay. So there's some of that. I'm going to throw out some other ones here. Let me know which ones resonate with you. Looking at what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, like what energy you're willing to be with your communication and what energy you're not willing to be, which are the ones that trigger you, which ones are the ones that you absolutely resist and you kind of go into shutdown around, and which ones are the ones that are like make you want to lean in, right? And then also, if there are certain ones that you need depending on certain areas of your life, like some people come to me because they would really love to have communication with their relationships or with their business. Those are the two big ones, relationships, including romantic relationships or with their family, to friendships, things like that. The biggest ones are usually with their kids and family and with their romantic partners, and really being able to have their voice with that. Okay. And one of the invitations I have, as I'm inviting any and every one of you to speak to, well, what would you like as your targets, is, are you willing to be vulnerable and talk about things that maybe you haven't had words for before, or you haven't let yourself look at before? Because if we're not willing to talk about something, we can't change it. And if we're not willing to talk about something, then we can't receive the information that's there about it. And if we're not willing to talk about something, then we can't contribute to it. And that's a little bit different than changing it or receiving from it. For instance, if I am somebody who is not refuses to look at poverty, to talk about poverty, then how am I going to actually get out of poverty myself? Or how am I going to be able to empower and support people who are poor? Maybe I'm working in non-for-profit, maybe if I'm doing civil advocacy work, maybe I am working in poor neighborhoods. But if you don't look at, well, what are the aspects of that that you're not able to talk about, and that you have this whole like tape over your mouth about, then how can you actually be the gift that you've always been with that? Okay. And there's so many different areas that this can show up. Okay. I'm looking at some other ones. Okay. Oh, being able to use their speaking fluent you, and when to actually call out lies and when to not call out lies. But the first part about that is, are you looking at where you're aware of lies? People really can't lie around me anymore. Like, I don't call them out all the time, but I'm absolutely aware, like, oop, that's a lie. Ooh, and a lot of times people don't even realize it's a lie, but you can be aware of it even if they're not ready to be aware of it yet. And then how could you use that to your advantage to improve your relationships, to excel your business? Gosh, there's just so many different applications to this, right? So, uh, okay, I'm seeing. All right, cool. Oh, and hi, thanks for the hearts and everything. I love it. Thank you. Appreciate it. Um, do, do, do. Oh, yes. And then last thing that someone mentioned to me about was scripts, or like the rules of communication. Like they wanted some guides and rules about it. And they're realizing that for some of the trainings they received for work, if you've taken a class and they give you these scripts, they sometimes will then hold on to those scripts so rigidly that they stop following their awareness, and they realize that it actually isn't working, but they don't know how to move away from the scripts and honor their awareness, their own communication style, their way of tweaking it. It's like, how can you use these as a platform, but then move and evolve from there? It's just a starting off point. And I had this with myself, and I've worked with other coaches, and they were helping me with different aspects of my business, because we all benefit from other people. Like, I am a coach to other people, and I also love having coaches and having mentors. It's all connected. It's not like, oh, you get to this point and you're like, all right, I know everything and I don't need to receive from anybody anymore. No, you want to reach out. And so one of the things that this person was given is those kind of scripts where it's like, oh, say this to this person and this when you're introducing this idea. Great. But then you start internalizing it and you get your own flow with it. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to tailor this more to the situation and to this person and make it more personalized. Well, there's a ways of going about doing that. So if any of those resonate, let me know. If there's some other one, let me know. One of the things that got me into looking at fluency wasn't just about the smooth speech, like stuttering, and the person that asked this call. It was actually about looking at stuttering and disfluency in a very, very different way. So I have a very different perspective, and this is another example of how I blend my energetic trainings and tools and awareness with the two master's degrees that I learned about learning disabilities and speech language pathology. So it makes me a little bit different. A little bit. So when I work with people who have disfluencies or stuttering, I realized after I started looking at this with myself, when I was stuttering, and with my family, which there's tons of people who stuttered in my family in the past. It runs on my mom's side of the family, my mom, my sister, all of my uncles, my maternal grandfather, they all stuttered. And in Puerto Rico, back in a long time ago, there wasn't speech and language services to address this. My sister was fortunate because she was in the United States by the time she was diagnosed with stuttering disorder and with a fluency disorder, and she was able to get speech and language services. And this kind of brought this realm and this discipline to my awareness. And yet, as I was in my high school years, before I decided to major in this, I had these stuttering moments, not regular day-to-day living like everyone else in my family. It was very particular to public speaking. And maybe some of you have that where you're kind of like locked up. It feels like a frog in your throat, or like this is all like a ball, like a rock in your throat in certain situations. Maybe it's public speaking. Maybe it's when certain people are around, or you're in a certain situation when you have to voice some particular stance or opinion. Maybe you're feeling like you have to explain yourself. Whatever it may be, we all have had those moments where we're like, what do I say here? Or I can't, it's a block. It's there. So for me, I had been doing independent study my junior year, I believe, of high school. So here I am, I'm 16, and I had done a whole year independent study on rape, myths, and realities. And I did it with two other fellow classmates. They're two other women. And each of us had a different part. So it was my friend Amanda, and Amanda's in our group. Hi, Amanda. And Chebecca, and then me, I had the third part. And as I was sitting there waiting to go and present, my body was getting more and more tense, and I was shaking, and I was shaking, and I was shaking. And I was like, oh my God, I'd never had that level of anxiety to that point. I definitely had worse moments of anxiety after that. But to that point, I had never had that level of anxiety where literally everything in me was shaking, shaking, shaking. Well, they recorded it. You can ask my family and friends. They were shocked because I'm the talker of the family, right? They'd never seen me like this before. And they recorded it. And in there, you could see that I couldn't get a sentence out without some kind of bumpiness in there. I had to keep revising what I was saying. It was like I was losing my train of thought. And it was just this shaking the whole time. Well, fast forward when I started looking at this in all these different ways that this was showing up in other areas of my life when I would have to speak in front of people, I made the demand to do whatever it took to be aware of what I could do instead of the shaking and to have more ease with this. So I started learning more tools, some of which we're going to talk about over the course of these calls. But one of the things that was the biggest game changer that helped me, that I'm going to start us off with today, is the question, well, what is my body trying to communicate to me that I am not acknowledging? And I'm going to put this in the chat for y'all. So now I am super grateful when I stutter. And y'all have seen me in some of the calls when I'll acknowledge it, like, oh, I'm stuttering. All right, I guess there's a lot of charge here. I guess it's bringing up a lot of stuff for people. What I didn't know back then when I was 16 that I was so judging myself about was I was picking up on everybody's points of views about rape, about the people who had been raped, who had avoided rape, who was guilty that they didn't save someone from being raped. So there was men, there was women, there was kids in that audience. It was like a lecture hall, you know. And over the course of my friend Amanda and then to Becca talking and then me, that was building and building and building in the room. So by the time I got to me, it was at this epicenter, this what is that the word? Apex? It was at this peak of like, whoa, they were like wanting to run out of the room, but they didn't want to be rude and feel like they were unsupportive to the students that were presenting because it was like presentation day. And so there's all these parents and family members that are watching these presentations to support students. And to be like, yay, you did a great job in your independent study. Well, it's like rape and sexual assault has a lot of charge to it. You know, some of you know that I'm a volunteer advocate at the Rape Crisis Center here in Savannah, and that I work with a lot of survivors in my coaching work as well. And so I've leaned into this ever since, but at the time, I didn't realize that my body was perceiving all of that and that that was a gift. And so I wonder how many of you, when you're having these blocked moments, when you're having these like, you can't really get it out. What is your body communicating to you that you're not acknowledging? since then, it's not just about me being this antenna of being aware of judgment or charge. When, I mean, it makes people very uncomfortable talking about this, let alone when a 16-year-old's girls are talking about it. They don't want to think that their 16-year-olds are having sex. They don't want to think about the fact that they might be assaulted. Because I was in a residential high school, so I didn't live with my parents. I was sent to the school and I lived there. I loved it. I loved going and living there and going to school away from home, starting at 15. But the parents don't want to think of these things that could quote unquote go wrong when they're leaving their children in these places. They want to feel that they're safe. They don't have to worry about any of these things, right? And I'm not saying that the parents should wring their hands and worry, but not being able to talk about it does not help. So here, my two classmates and I were waving it in their faces like, hey, this is a possibility. And for me, the other thing I was aware of was I was already perceiving a future. I was sexually assaulted years after that. I think I was 21, so 5 years after that, something like that, 2021, if I'm doing my math correctly. And so how much was I already perceiving the future at that moment? And so when it was so interesting when I actually was assaulted and I was totally in denial about it. And I'm not sure how the topic kind of went here, but I'm just going to follow my awareness about it. If y'all need me to reroute, let me know. But there's something here, it seems like, for a lot of us. So when I was assaulted, instead of being like, oh, I definitely made myself wrong for a while. I definitely was ashamed. I definitely felt all these things that is really common. I was able to go back to the information I provided about rape myths and realities that I did with these two classmates. And I was like, what's true here and what's not true? And I started looking at that. And I used those questions to get out of the hole that I was in that was keeping me from showing up, which connects to this Speak Fluent You. I was all of a sudden going into hiding. I didn't want to leave my apartment. There was a bunch of things that happened right after my assault. So it was like boom, 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 where it was like everything in the world was attacking me. I had a lot of health issues. I was hit by a car while I was walking, hit and run. It was all within a couple months between August and December of the year that I was assaulted. And so I was like, if I go outside, what else is going to happen to me? And I really worried about that. And then instead of staying there, I was like, what else can I do to change this? And so the 16-year-old that I was able to contribute and support the 21-year-old that was feeling broken and feeling like there was no way I could ever show up as me again. And how many of us have that where we're feeling like so downtrodden, like there's just no way I can get out of this hole. There's no way that I'll create this, survive this, thrive beyond this, whatever that is. That's where I was. And so I wonder what you all knew before that, of those moments of, oh, this is what's true, this is what's not true. There are all those moments, if we've had moments like that, and we've all had at least one, if not multiple, where we've been able to perceive through the baloney, through the bullshit, and we were able to say, oh, this actually isn't true at all. If we could do that in those moments, what if we could apply that to how we show up and to our communication realities, to us speaking fluently, authentically as us? It wasn't as quick as I wanted, but it happened. I was able to move through all of that guilt and the shame and the health issues. It was a journey, okay? And yet the question that I put in the chat for y'all, what is my body communicating to me that I'm not acknowledging, was the beginning of it all. Okay? Now, the other thing that I'm gonna end on this. And then you guys let me know what y'all think. And just a reminder again, when you're putting the comments in the chat, when you're liking it, I'm gonna within 24 hours, I'm gonna announce who's the winner of the free 1 hour replay of the whole call I did on Speak Fluent You 4 years ago. Okay. And so be on the lookout for that and go ahead and let me know if you'd like to put your name in the ring, in the hat for that. The point of this that I really would like to leave you with today is your body isn't wrong for having any bumpy moments when it gets stopping yourself, when it might be telling you, shut up. It might be telling you, gosh, what are you aware of? Like, what are the people really thinking? You might have thoughts that pop into your head and you realize, oh, wow, that's what this person is thinking about what I'm talking about right now. So do I address that or not? Like, I use that to my advantage when I facilitate calls. There's things that will pop in my head. I was like, oh, that's what people are thinking about what I'm saying. Okay. Or that's a question that I need to address. Okay. And I'm willing to have barriers down and address it if it's going to create more, and just acknowledge it for myself and let it move on through if it's not going to create more to address, and go from there. There is so much possible when we're willing to stop feeling like we have to fix our communication reality. There is nothing wrong with your body and how it's showing up, and there is nothing wrong with your communication reality. What can we add to it, and more skills, more strategies, more tools that we can add so that you have ease with your communication? And what are some of the things to let go of that is that sticking points, that sliminess, like the judgment, like the points of views that we've bought from other people that isn't actually going to work for us anymore? The living and dying of it. You guys have hopefully checked out some of the living and dying calls that we've done, where we talked about the elements of living. Living is what you add in, that'll create more. Dying is what you let go of, that'll create more. All right. So where are you living and dying with your communication? Where are you living and dying with your communication? And my target personally with these series, with this first call and then the next two that we're going to do this month, is for you to have more of your communication reality, of what's true for you with communication, so that you can actually show up more as yourself, authentically, joyfully, exuberantly you in the world. And when you're willing to also be aware of other people's communication realities, which maybe I hope we can get to. I'm going to ask for it. Can we get to that by the end of these calls? Do you think we might be able to get to that? If we are willing to be aware of other people's communication realities and how it intersects with ours, gosh, I wonder what that would create. Okay. All right, beautiful people. Let me know what questions you have. Let me know what this brings up for you. And be on the lookout for the announcement in 24 hours for who wins the free 1 hour replay. Thanks so much, lovelies. Bye for now.